What's up, it's Rev. Welcome back to number 2 of the Oasis rebuild project. Today we're doing Rio Verde in the Skyward Palms neighborhood. And let me just say, this was a really fun build. I feel like I'm getting back into the flow of things. Kind of getting my groove on a little better than last time, as I'm getting more and more used to building again. But this house is a mid-century modern with a really interesting indoor-outdoor concept. You can see I'm doing that kind of outdoor courtyard that will be actually the first thing that you walk into through the front entrance of this house. This is inspired by a house in Thousand Oaks, California. It's just like in that Malibu, LA area, kind of north of Malibu. And you'll see I just start out really blocking out my rooms. I had a really good idea of the floor plan going into this, but some of it still does change. End up doing a pretty big back patio area, and this is I guess it technically could be a 3-bed, 2-bath, or 3-bed, 2.5 bath, but I go with a 2-bed, 2.5 bath. Each bedroom does have an attached bathroom, and then the half bath is more in the living area of the house. And you'll see right here is where things get really interesting with this build. This is what initially drew me to the house. Was this concept that you will see on lots of the Eichler homes that makes it this whole indoor-outdoor thing. And this one in particular has this double A-frame roof line that I just love. It makes it feel so open when you're walking in. And you'll see I tried to make those side roofs just as flat as possible before adding the roof trims that just really make them all flow together, so it looks like one cohesive roof. And then you'll see that I pulled the roof out onto those friezes that for some reason they like to go inside sometimes, but that's not too big of a problem. Then I finally light my build up. I do have a very bad habit of not adding my lighting until like the very end. I just build in the dark. But you'll see right here I use these spade windows that are frosted, and I just triple them up on the front so that it is kind of one of those things where you can maybe let some light in, but it adds privacy since that is the entrance to your home. And then up above, I'm not too worried about those being see-through, so I add those, and then I fiddle with this door for quite a bit. Really indecisive there, trying to find just the perfect one. And then I'll resize this little window up top a little bit to try and blend it into the other two. And then I love this one door. I think that's from the Celebrity Pack, but I end up going with the glass door. I figured it's okay. The majority of that windowed front is with the privacy glass. I figured it was okay for the door to just be clear for this courtyard. And then I move in and start adding my sliding doors. And then on this one, I want it to be very open, because this is going to be into the living room. And you'll see I just end up going with those new glass walls that we recently got in a base game update. And I also put that on the top roof piece so that you have this really just floor to ceiling window with the A-frame. And then I move on in here and do the back, where that middle section is planned to be a fireplace. So I'm just blocking that out. I have to move the roof a little bit just to get it in place. And then sometimes matching the brick is really hard in this game, and that tends to affect me doing a visible fireplace on a build, but I think it worked out with this one. And then I got a little funky here with those fences on top to kind of hide that line on the flat part, and then those pillars, I do kind of wish that they would sit flat, but because it's on a corner, that specific pillar does not like to sit flat. And then I add the fireplace on there for the inside, and then I end up going with this big open door from, I think, the patio kit for that courtyard to living room transition. And then I end up changing all of those sliding doors to this base game one because it has a color matching swatch with that larger open door. And then I add a single door instead of a sliding door right there for what is going to be the entrance to the kitchen slash dining area. And I come over here and I decide that I need this to be a little bit wider because I don't like doing single wide hallways. I think it's just feels way too cramped, especially with the doorways, because they reach like into the corners of the wall, and I just don't like how that looks. So I end up going with these arches from Lovestruck, I believe, and I do the big arch for any of the kind of main living areas with the space for that, and then that smaller arch is the entrance to the bathroom. That on the back side is the bedroom, and I'm playing with the walk-in closet right there, and it just feels a little too cramped to me to have the closet door on that wall touching the other doors. So I end up pushing it back, and it still works just as good to me. And then this is where I really struggled. The original house that inspired this build has these like white tile floors throughout the house. I like it in real life, don't like how it translates into The Sims. So I end up messing around with the idea of carpeted bedrooms with that new carpet that was also in that recent base game update, but I don't end up going with that, and you'll see eventually I just cave in and end up switching to wooden floors. And originally this has a light palette concept, and you'll see I am kind of doing the white walls, but then eventually you'll see where this house has a lot of wood paneling walls, and I really was wishing that the game had more swatches for the wood paneled wall. It comes with Dine Out, I believe, and I know everybody doesn't have that pack. Not the worst pack, it's just very broken in my experience. But I kind of let the lighter colored wood floors sit there for a minute, and then this is where I started messing with those wood panels. This one's from Eco Lifestyle, I believe, and I do like it. It's definitely an option that would have worked, but I'm not at all upset with how this house does turn out going away from the kind of lighter wood theme. But I mess around with that, and then another one that I let sit there for a minute and just think about it, and I make sure all my door swatches look okay with this Dine Out paneling, and this is where I end up going with the darker floor. And then in the kitchen area, that's where you'll see a majority of that paneling on 3 walls, I believe. And then in the living area off to the side of the living area where you would get towards the kitchen, I also do that wood paneling so that it's all cohesive in that one area. And this is where I'm kind of trying to lay out my doorways for this back area where you would have 2 bedrooms that are pretty small, and then this would be like a shared bathroom area that does end up turning into the master bedroom, and I'm very happy with how that turns out. You see I just resized this little window to make that feel nice and open, and then I add in all my windows for this room that will turn into an office, start laying in the bathroom plumbing. And I love this toilet from, I believe, Snowy Escape, I want to say. I think it has like the little bidet thing on, and I think it just really works, especially for these kind of West Coast homes. Then you'll see this bathroom. This is where I kind of realized like this one is the one with the double sink, so I want that area to be the master. Add my TV above the fireplace, and then I start trying to think about how I want this kitchen laid out. I do end up going with this countertop from the Cool Kitchen, I want to say. It's the one that I think comes with like a ice cream maker or something. And I think I do go with the stove from that pack as well. Base game dishwasher, and I believe that's a base game fridge. And then I think these overhead cabinets that I end up using are from Dream Home Decorator. And I don't love the countertop color for this build, but I do like the faces of the counter, so I just stuck with it anyways. I got my bar stools that I wanted to do, and then you see I'll really kind of stick to this more of a dark reddish wood for a lot of the furniture, and I think it looks really good for kind of these older mid-century modern builds, while still being an up-to-date, well-decorated home. You'll see I go with that kind of reddish color on the table too, and then I've got these matching chairs that match the bar stools. I pulled that island kind of in towards the middle because I did not like how it felt a little cramped when you walk into the kitchen from the living room. And then there's also that other entrance into the dining area. I had these little wide windows up top, just with the idea of letting some light in. Unfortunately, the way that this lot sits, it does not allow a ton of natural light to go into those windows. I think that the sun rises kind of on either like the front corner or the back corner, and it just doesn't really hit those windows, but that's fine. Then I jump over here, start laying out some beds to get an idea of what I want to do there. You'll see this room has now officially turned into the master bedroom. This hallway will shrink right here into so that master bathroom is attached to the master bedroom. We've got the double closet, and then I like to always lay a rug under the bed. I do that for both bedrooms, and then I start doing all my rugs for where you walk in, and I want to add another one to the main living room area where all the furniture will be, one under the kitchen table, or the dining table rather, and then I always like to add a little one for the bathtubs and for the kitchen sink and any exterior door that I feel could use one. This bathroom does shrink into a half bath because it was full bath area with that 2x3. And then you'll see I do jump around quite a bit because when I see something, when I have an idea, I really just have to go and lay it down so that I don't forget while it's fresh. And then this master bedroom being on the front does have the issue of I want large windows, but on the front you want it to feel like it has privacy. So I do think that I solve that to the best of my ability, where I will eventually add some curtains to it, and then the landscaping I think helps kind of give the privacy feeling as well. And I just add a dresser, because the closets don't quite work as the dresser in this game. And then I add this little table that would be where one of your Sims can sit and do their makeup or whatever. Then this is where I end up going with the blinds for the single window, add the curtains for that feel of privacy. I only add the curtains where there are the actual window pieces. I don't end up putting that on the floor to ceilings. I don't like the look that would give. But you'll see I put it on this back door, and then I add a window with it as well. Just make it feel really nice and open. A lot of light can come in. Going to this master bedroom again. I want to do a tall dresser as well. And then I start looking at my ottomans for the end of the bed, and I just lay all of these out and look at all of my swatches to see which one is going to fit best with the current color scheme. I end up going with this one. I want to say that it might be from Lovestruck. Not super familiar with all the Lovestruck things yet. I have not played the game very much since I bought that pack. I kind of mess with the idea of adding a second tall dresser, because I would expect that there is a couple living in this house. However, I do get rid of that second tall dresser and turn that area into the closet, kind of into where you would see a full body mirror. And then I add all my fans in there, slide this bed over so that there is room for a nightstand that's not running into that window. I go with this one that has that same dark wood swatch, and then you'll see right here is where I get that full body mirror in here, and end up going back to just that first original tall upright dresser that I had. I love this little plush rug. That one is from Lovestruck. And then I add a analog clock into the kitchen area. I'm not sure that's something that you really see people do anymore. With everything has a digital clock, your microwave, and everything like that. Your oven or stovetop will have like a digital clock. So I'm not sure you see the analog clocks anymore, but I love this one from the bowling night. I think it really works for a mid-century modern like this one. You'll see I go with these brown leather couches that I think just really fits in with the kind of wood tones that I've gone with for all the other furniture in this house. Got 2 couches and 2 armchairs. I do mess with the idea of this bedside table that I used in the master bedroom right there. It does change though in the future. And then I love these little ones. I put them on all sides of the couch. And then I find this one from Island Living that I like a little better for between those 2 armchairs. And at this point, I am fully into the decorating process, thinking about what paintings I can use. I love this new painting. I sized it up a little bit with Tool Mod because the bracket sized it up just a bit too big for what I wanted. But I love this new painting that they gave us with the base game. I put it in the living room and also in that second bedroom, guest bedroom, child's bedroom, whoever that's going to be. Then I start kind of trying to liven up the area with some indoor plants. I don't typically go with a lot of yellow in my builds or just in any area of my life. Not a big fan of yellow. But I think when used correctly, it definitely has its moments. I will say with a lot of the wall decoration in this game, I tend to get to where I will feel like there's not enough, and like I tend to use every painting that I like in every house that I build. So really just try to look through all the swatches and make sure there's not a one that I'm not used to using. Right there in the living room, you see I added that little beverage table, and then I turned that area next to the kitchen into a laundry room and pantry, and then I kind of start cluttering this little bar table. I don't know if you noticed in the garage, I went and added my trash cans. I like to do 3 trash cans for all these California homes because they do tend to have the 3 bins, one for trash, recycling, and yard waste. I find this drink tray that I was originally looking for, so I switched that out. Add some magazines to the living room table, and then I find these new bottles from Life and Death, I believe, that work out really well. And then as I'm scrolling through the clutter things, you'll see me just kind of grab things and put them in another room sometimes. I tend to do that just so that I don't forget about that item. And then I like to add garden hoses to the outside of my build. I thought it'd be kind of weird in the courtyard. It would have made sense, but I just pushed it out towards the front. Then I turned this little room into a home gym, and I'm looking for this weight rack that I know came with Lovestruck. I can't find it now, but I do find it eventually. And that little gym could have been an office area as well, but I used that larger room for the office, smaller room for the home gym, and then I turned this laundry area into the pantry as well, with these, I think, eco lifestyle shelves, I want to say. And I come back in here and realize I forgot my overhead vent for the stovetop, and I go with this one from the base game, I believe. And then I come in here and start exploring ideas again with this kitchen sink because I really want there to be a window on it. And you'll see I add this backsplash in, and it really annoyed me because at the height I needed the backsplash to be so that it matched up, I could not have that window as low as I want it to be, because when I pull the backsplash up, it cuts into the window, like it sticks through the windowsill. So I struggled a little bit with that, but raise the window, you can raise it a lot more than it looks like from that kind of 3/4 view that you have top down. Then I always like to add under counter lighting for my kitchen builds, and I do that, slide shelves over to make sure after I raise it with the 9 key that it is still sticking out of the cabinets. And I go around, add some candles to the living room area, add this beautiful chandelier from the Life and Death pack, and then I'm exploring the idea of these island living overhead lights for the island counter, but I'd go with these kind of cylinder ones. I'm not sure what pack that's from. That one that I had up there before I like for hallways, so I do end up adding that there. And then this is where things got pretty fun again with my ceiling fans. I always like to try to add a light, like a globe, under the ceiling fan. I grab this medium, it ends up being a medium height light, and I just raise that up with the 9 key, going to free cam to look and line it up so that it's not sticking through the roof, but it is touching the roof of that A-frame. And then what I'll do is, once I find my height for that, I'll just raise the fan up again with the 9 key. And then once again, I go with this light that I like to use in the hallways for that secondary area off to the side of the living room. I sized down that same light in the short wall height form for the bedroom lights. Just size it down once or twice, and I think it fits very nicely into that fan there. Then you'll see me come back into here. I'm still looking at my lighting. Go with this tall lamp for that table between the two armchairs, and then some more candles in the living area. I do love this lamp that I end up putting on this table. And then I go with this bookshelf from one of the creator kits that recently came out. And I go with this green swatch because I don't want everything to feel too orange. And then I like to add this little bowl on top of something in most of my builds, kind of as a place where you might drop your keys when you walk in or anything like that. Then I just fill up those slots on top of the bookshelf so that I can free place my items towards the edges, so that that painting I have right there doesn't have to be raised up too much. I add this bamboo one into that courtyard. I don't want the courtyard to feel too overgrown with plants, but I do want there to be some in there. And then I just come back in here and add this little triple potted plant, this tree, and I toss that one out there for later use. Come in here and free place this one on the kitchen island. I do mess around with this little decoration from the Snowy Escape, but I believe I end up getting rid of it later. You see, I'm just laying out the little clutter items that I see whenever I scroll past them in my build by. I go with this little dog next to the fireplace, my spice rack, and just a little carousel of kitchen clutter. I love that kitchen clutter pack. And then you'll see right there, I finally found that weight rack that I knew existed from Lovestruck. I can just never remember the name of it. And then I go back into the living room, really unhappy with how that decoration was, so kind of rethink that. And then right here, I've got that knife block from the Cool Kitchen, I believe, and that cookbook as well. I've got the dishes next to the sink, and all these little details just make your build feel more alive, in my opinion. And then I add my burglar alarm and my fire alarm in the kitchen. I feel like with the way that you walk into that courtyard, like initially going into this house, it made the most sense to put that burglar alarm on the kitchen wall or like the dining room wall, because the living room has those glass walls, so I can't put it there. And then there is the two wide frames that don't leave any space on that wall next to it. Come back here into the bedroom, little open book, everything just to make this build feel more alive and lived in. That's the true beauty of clutter. It does amazing things to make your build feel more alive. Add a little book, two table lamps that I end up free placing, and a candle. I like to add a couple of shoes outside of the closet, and then I come back over here to this little makeup table, and I end up picking a mirror that I have to lower. I think all the mirrors are kind of expected that your sim is standing while they're using them, but for this one, for the effect, I lowered it with the tool mod. And then I liked to add a little lamp on this table for the idea of that nail clutter. Maybe you need some direct lighting for if your sim is doing their nails on this table. And I come into here with this thing from the kitchen clutter and just add a couple of those to the pantry shelves. End up really bouncing back and forth a lot between these rooms. That's kind of what happens when you clutter. When you see clutter, you have to grab it, or else you might kind of forget that you saw it and wanted to use it. I mess with this kitchen sink a little bit to add that soap and brushes to the back of it. And I come in here and start adding my indoor trash can. Can't forget that. And I do always wish that that trash can I chose had a lid. I think it's the best looking indoor kitchen trash can for the game. I like that it's tall, but I just really wish that it would have a lid on it. Then I jump back into here, into the bathrooms. So I add my hand towels on both of those, jump to the other bathroom and add the hand towel there. And then I add this little organizer to the guest bedroom, add my soap and toothbrush, free placing that so that it will sit on this edge of the sink. And then I just go in here and free place all of my clutter in the master bathroom. Free place that little skincare bottle into the tray with the others. Add the razor, some sunscreen. I do a bar soap on this side that would not sit as nicely on the sink, so I just do it off to the side. And then I really wanted to use that towel stack with the soap on top, but there's just no room for this. And then I had a hamper for the master bedroom. Add this little shower caddy for both showers. Even though that shower does come with kind of a built-in decoration like that, I just like to add the other caddy on the wall to make it feel a little bit more alive. And this is where I really want to do the double towels for the master bedroom, but it feels cramped with that toilet being there in the corner. So I kind of messed around with the idea of moving that over. I do end up reverting to how the toilet was originally sitting there. And then I go in, I like to add light switches to all my builds. It's the little things to me that really make a build feel real and lived in, like a livable space. For your Sims, I don't see a lot of light switches typically in building. I think it's a forgotten item in the game. But I have this one from one of the kits that I bought, and there is a base game light switch, but I like this one. I bought it, so I may as well use it. I just go in and make sure to add that in all my rooms. Sometimes I struggle with the height placement of them. Just without having a sim present, it can be difficult to kind of visualize how high you're really placing that, especially when you do the medium height walls, anything higher than the default walls. But then I come in here to this half bath and just add in the sink. Then I go in here, add my outdoor lighting, and I end up having to slide those two windows over a little bit, and it makes it even on the outside, uneven on the inside, which is fine. And then just add this single light for the courtyard. I think about putting one on both sides, but I think it's fine just having one. I love this little night light for like a bathroom. Kind of wish I added more of those maybe next to the toilets. Go in here now and put my lighting over all of the mirrors in the bathrooms, and then I come in and just remove all of the spam lighting that I placed earlier, just so that I could see in here. And add my bedside tables to the secondary bedroom. I fit this plant piece into the courtyard in a corner right there, and I think the big thing was that I wanted to focus on there was that not all of that courtyard had to be covered in plants. I think that just being the rocks is fine. So then I fill up this office table that I end up going with lamps, so that I can free place my phone and the lamp where I actually want it to be. And then I add this little clutter piece with the pencils, pens, scissors, all your office things. I go with this chair. I believe I want to say that chair is from Life and Death. and then this wall decoration, and then I end up going with these little double bookshelves. I'm so glad there was two of them, so that it doesn't feel repeated with the clutter that it comes on them. Go with this red accent table behind the desk, add in my computer, and this is the Dream Home Decorators area, and then later you'll see I turn the garage into the photographer's area, but really could be a shared office or whatever you really want it to be. Add that fig tree outside in the courtyard. Right here, grab this fire pit and all of these chairs. I really do like the red swatch on those, looking at it now, but I stick with the kind of yellow theme that you tend to see throughout this build for those chairs, and start adding in a couple of plants, but not overcrowding it with plants. Then I'll start doing my exterior landscaping. I think that this house is a perfect house if your sim is going to throw a lot of parties, dinner parties, whatever type of party you want to throw for your sims. I think that this is a very good entertaining house, with that large living room, the courtyard with all those seats. But then I come out here, end up stretching this gravel across the front face, and then this is where I wanted to add that super low fence from the Get to Work pack, I believe, but because of that spandrel up top, it would not work for me to block out the whole thing. So I just do it where it touches the grass, so it separates that gravel from the grass. And then I come in here and add these tall hedge tree things for that added privacy, since those big windows are on the front face of the house for the master bedroom. And then I just resize them slightly, each one different with the tool mod, and rotate them ever so slightly, just so that it feels more natural, so that you don't have like this same exact tree feeling 5 times in a row out front. And then right here I start kind of thinking about how I want this patio to look, so I drag it out a little bit more. And then right here I've got my pool outside. I end up finding this pool skimmer that I am looking for, and just throw it behind that air conditioner. And I always like to add that if my builds have a pool, so luckily that air conditioner wall was just long enough to fit it, didn't have to size it down or anything. And I add my ladders, and you'll see I come in here and look through my pool trims, and I believe the one I end up picking is from Lovestruck, but I always add the pool skimmers to the side. I did 2 of them. Kind of wanted it to be on opposite sides, but I felt like it was fine to just add them over here. And then with that pool trim, they were cutting into the overlay of it, so I just had to size them down a little bit and slide it over. And then make sure to color your pool walls and the floor of it. And I add my lounge chairs, and then once again, there are like 4 of them, too many for the occupants of the house, but that is because I think that this house would be very good for a party place. And I do end up putting that as a lot trait, is party place. So I had these little side tables for the loungers. 2 of them I wanted to put in the shade so that your face can be in the shade if you're laying out there. Add my grill, and then go into the outdoor furniture and end up putting a outdoor table here for if you want to eat outside. And then I come over here and I want to add a little plant, but I don't want it to be something that would block that pool life preserver, so I just end up going with the low flowers. And I come in here, add my terrain paint. I always like to do a little dot under any trees on a low opacity, and then I just like to drag that around the edge of everything that touches the grass. Here I'm looking just to make sure that single light in the courtyard is enough. And then I'm very particular with my placement of that fig tree, just to make sure that it's not cutting into the window. That's a big pet peeve of mine. But I add my address from Lovestruck and some outdoor lighting on the front face where that garage door is. Add some more plants under those little bush trees. Come in here to the garage. Add that hallway lighting that I like to use. And this is where you'll see I add that Moschino pack stuff for your sim that could be a photographer as their career. And just kind of dim that overhead light so that the focus there is the standing light for the photographer. And then I come in here, can't forget some back gates for this pool area. Do end up having to change that fence. So I go with the business and hobbies fence because it actually lines up with that gate. And that's that.